All right. So, welcome to Assets and Algorithms, the show where we explore the intersection of real estate and technology. I'm here today with my guest, Michael Van Every, and he's a leader at the Republic Urban Properties. So, thank you for joining me today, Michael.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm excited to jump into a few of the things you have going on over there with your team. I'm sure we'll get into a little bit about how you guys are seeing apartments being built, a little bit about the technology and all of that. But first, I want to dive into your background. Can you share a little bit about your role and how it fits into the bigger picture?
Thank you. Again, Michael Van Avery, Republic Urban Properties. I'm the president and managing partner for what is a full service commercial real estate company. I'm located here in San Jose, California, but we also have offices in Washington, D.C. And we essentially primarily build commercial projects associated with transit-oriented development, mainly apartments, but we've also built hotels, commercial office, and retail.
Awesome. Awesome. It sounds like you guys are doing a lot of great things out there, and I'm excited to dive in a little bit into the building aspects of technology as it relates to prop tech. So, can you tell me what a typical day looks like for you? What tech stack are you using, and how are you navigating that day?
It's interesting, in, being here in Silicon Valley. I think commercial real estate is a very old business, right? Any kind of real estate, dates back, obviously the time man could walk and build structure. And so in some ways, real estate, the construction of real estate, the development of real estate has been slow to embrace technology. But as we all are now, many of the things that we use day in and day out are what anyone would use. Microsoft Suite, primarily Office for email, or maybe you're on the Apple operating system because Apple's in Cupertino, California. I happen to be on Microsoft operating system. But what goes with that now is a host of software that helps you add, subtract, do geometry, calculus. Obviously, the older versions would be the Excel version, which Excel I still think is a fantastic baseline for any young college student. But we're starting to see artificial intelligence now really become a huge factor into how we add, subtract, multiply to basically put together pro formas for projects. So we are starting to see a lot more in artificial intelligence that helps and assists the developer, the construction manager, and others, not just be more organized, but also help them project profits and loss or what a project or analyze a project. So we're starting to see, in particular, ChatGPT and its deep research kind of capabilities are really having a major impact, including also legal documents as well, which is a very large part of as a commercial real estate developer. The legal part, the government part plays a big role in that as well.
Absolutely. I agree completely. I mean, your work sits at the intersection of housing innovation and sustainability. It's one of the most forward-thinking regions of the country. Like you mentioned, we're seeing, everything from policy shifts to construction tech reshaping real estate. So I'd like to ask, what major changes are you seeing in the modular and single-family home space, especially in California, pushing for all electric and solar-ready homes, moving away from natural gas?
Yeah, excellent question, Derek. So it's interesting because many cities now in the Bay Area are mandating electric only. They call it the REACH code, which essentially translates into here's the building code. We want you to go farther, and in most cases away from natural gas. It's been difficult because the way power, is created and generated and distributed in California, it's very difficult and very expensive. For example, now, whereas when we build a large apartment complex, say 200 units or more, you usually service the hot water through hot water heaters, which are serviced through natural gas. Now that's completely gone, and it is difficult because in a mixed use project, it's very difficult to lure in restaurants that, especially Michelin, not Michelin rated because that's difficult to get, but say a chef that with a well-known restaurant might have a real problem with not being able to cook on natural gas. But what we're seeing those opportunities as well, because as we develop more projects, not having to run natural gas lines into your project, having projects that are self-performing with solar, at least for, 40 to 60% of the energy consumption. And it does incentivize and create, opportunities for revenue, other revenue, just instead of just your straight line apartment rent, there are opportunities to make solar revenue, and of course, charge that back. We're also starting to see that now with more of your home link kind of technologies too, whether it's cameras, low voltage speakers, monitoring systems. It's all kind of being embedded in that shift from natural gas into electric. And it is, you're right, it really has innovated out here. It's the most expensive out here. We're even more expensive, God willing, than the great city of New York, which I know you reside in one of its great boroughs there. I would have never thought growing up as a young man that San Jose, California would be more expensive than New York City. It's really, and some of it does have to do with the new technologies, but ultimately you hope that's going to be a better and a more efficient way to create new projects.
Absolutely. That's always the goal, more efficiency and streamlining processes. With that in mind, are you actively exploring mobility tech or things like smart parking, EV charging integration, and using that to help residents flow through the space?
Yes, EV technology is mind-boggling. Um, Love them, hate them, what have you, but Tesla now is really the leader in the EV charging space. So we're seeing Tesla and others. Shell is also a very big player in the EV charging space. So they're not only as a shopping, so we also do own shopping malls, strip malls, traditional ones, and you're seeing Shell and Tesla really come to you with the ability to install up to 20, 30 charging stations. They're doing it at their cost. They're processing it through the electricity provider, in this case, the Pacific Gas and Electric here in Northern California. And they're installing these stations in key locations along corridors to your point to move people from A to B and to also encourage electric travel at longer distances. We're starting to see that at a everywhere. As it relates to new development, it is an absolute standard now in the building code that pretty much any kind of a new development you build, you're building anywhere, let's say if it's a 200 unit project, you're going to have a requirement somewhere between 50 and 20 EV chargers. So that is very standard. Government, of course, is building that with everything. But in addition to that, in terms of mobility, we're also having many locations. So bikes now, bike and pedestrian travel, whether it's, a standard bike or electric bike or even scooter, that last mile from your apartment to the transit station, there's a lot of encouragement to have alternative forms of non-automobile uses so you can get that person. And I think where you live is the greatest example of where the best transportation is in the world, at least in the United States. But we here in California, with everything so spread apart, that technology to have again non-automobile uses, and all of them are normally electric or self-propelled to get people from that last mile from their home to that transit station and back. That's also a big part of how we look at not just charging stations, but of course, all the things that go with non-vehicle use.
Absolutely. I think you did make a great point. Here in New York, we definitely have changed a lot of the way that we approach transportation with a lot of scooters and e-bikes and city bikes that they're encouraging creating those bike lanes for people to choose those alternative forms of transportation. And then of course you see that the EV charging stations pop up everywhere from Tesla and others as well.
Blown away in New York about how many scooters are within the right-of-ways now. Frankly, it's kind of scary, New York and San
Yeah.
Francisco. You don't have a lot of space, but hey, you're getting people from point A to point B, and that's the game.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'd like to dive in a little bit into how technology has impacted your firm's growth strategy. How are you approaching it from a systems perspective?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Again, I think with artificial intelligence becoming, I think the issue now for companies to grow with technology is really just embracing the technology. And it's difficult. I'm 56 years old. I'm a Gen Xer, and so I obviously grew up from say only from about 22 on where we actually had a functioning internet, right? And
Mm,
so I'm at the older end of the spectrum now, and I find that it's more difficult for people to embrace the technology to actually expand and be more efficient. So that's something that I think with the Gen Zers, the millennials, that we're starting to see more embracement again of AI. I think, especially on the accounting side, with instead of having your traditional paper invoices and things like that, we're starting to see a lot more efficiency with the accounting side, where whether it's billing or just actual accounting work related to how to balance a profit and loss sheet. So we're seeing that really now becoming the standard, whereas even 5 years ago, everyone would still be using paper. I think the other part, obviously, is remote work. And that's the easiest one. That now it is, again, you're not traveling from point A to point B for a meeting. You're able to have as many meetings as you can in a waking day. The issue though is how do you capture, and make sure you have action items and that you're not moving too fast. Again, artificial intelligence being able to record this meeting even here today, to go back and to edit or to make sure you have all the information and action items from those notes. These days, artificial intelligence with one click of a button or one command is going to spit out exactly what you need to do at that point. But I think it's a mindset and it's an embracement, especially again, someone that's my age might be a little intimidated by it. It's akin to your mom and dad maybe having a flip phone versus a smartphone. My mom and dad being a baby boomer, of course. You're a little bit younger than me, so maybe your mom and dad are a little bit more on it. But I think that's part of it. It's a mind framing and the embracement of that, and it's an investment because nothing comes for free. Everyone has a subscription now. Everybody has some hardware that will do something better. And so the question is, do you have the budget and the ability to implement that budget to make it most cost effective? The larger, obviously, high tech is high tech. They're doing it. That's why Salesforce now is really taking hold of the world. Salesforce is no longer just an HR software. Nonprofits use it, fundraising efforts use it, and it's really taken hold. So it's just an incredible time where we may actually be, going into a digital age that people have envisioned back when they were watching Star Trek or Star Wars.
yeah, I definitely agree. It does seem like we are heading towards some of those science fiction, Star Trek and Star Wars, techs. People are speaking to their watches. We have
Yeah.
video calls for a while now, and uh, really a lot more that we could speak about every day. We talked about Tesla and some of the self-driving cars. I agree with that 100%. Let me ask, what metrics or signals would you say you and your team watch most closely as some of these things develop and as you're moving forward with your projects?
Good question. Like any customer service based industry, we take a lot of our cues from, the people that we house. So the folks that live in our apartments, many or that maybe work in an office building are going to help us really kind of shape how we use technology, going forward. So, for example, now to give a kind of a real estate example for an apartment in most places in California, and I'm sure it's the same there in the great state of New York, that parking is kind of an optional item for a building. So, in other words, I might build 200 apartments, but I might only give, 100 parking spaces. And out of those 100 parking spaces, I'm going to charge for those, in that regard. And so how do we provide that parking? And then is it going to be underground or are we going to use a mechanical parking lift? Those, of course, a lot in New York as well. We're starting to see that technology here really take hold in California, that a mechanical parking system that is above ground is a little less expensive than going below ground, especially in a earthquake sensitive, fault line sensitive state. And so we are starting to see that, so that the consumer's saying, look, we still want parking, we'll pay for parking. And we like or we don't like mechanical parking. We have some people who are concerned about their cars going into the mechanical system. We have a very high-tech system in our project called Station 16 in the city of Millbrae, which is right next to San Francisco International, if you're familiar with where San Francisco International is. And essentially, we have a mechanical kind of puzzle system. Your car goes in a revolving type of elevator that goes up and around, and it drops your car off, and then it comes back. Now, you can charge your car in that particular puzzle lift, and you can do all these great things. However, when that system doesn't work, and there are times when that system can have some errors, it does create some problems. So that feedback that we get, we might decide, well, maybe we don't like that kind of technology going forward, even though it's good technology, but it's not perfect. So again, we let the user define, how far we push technology. You mentioned modular homes. We're starting to see single family modular homes become built more for secondary units where people just crane those into their backyard and they have it. It's completely built out, as you know. We're now starting to see the stacking together of 4 modulars in one to create a single family home. But it's unknown, how that will wear, what's the durability of it. There still is concern about those kinds of technology. So again, the user experience is going to determine how companies implement, how far they implement new technology. It's a slippery slope because if the technology is not good, the user experience is bad. In real estate, it's catastrophic, right? You likely will lose a ton of money, which is bad. And you're probably going to get yelped real bad too, right? That's the other part of technology. Now, like for example, somebody that's on this interview that doesn't like me, they can go and yelp me and say that Van Avery guy is XYZ, right?
Yeah.
So it's the user experience that really dictates how business or commercial real estate will determine whether or not that's good technology.
Absolutely. I think it's all about creating that user interface and making sure that the users are having not only a good experience, but a better experience than previously available. So it'll be interesting to see how that continues to change and make things better for them. Looking ahead, right? Let's say 6 to 12 months, where do you want your team to be in terms of project pipeline or impact when you think about all the changes happening in North California?
In today's world, 6 to 12 months could be an eternity with social media and the people in charge of our country. But I'll leave
Hmm.
it at that. I think 6 to 12 months in a commercial real estate company is a very short period of time. In California, it could take 6 to 12 years just to get a project, from start to finish. It's a very elongated timeline. And so what I like about some of your questions today is everything we've talked about today and the questions you've asked me is to shorten that timeline and to actually make things more efficient and more profitable and more sustainable. And so I think we're thinking about that every day. I think government in California might think about it too much. And that's some of our kind of problems why we don't produce enough housing. And so our job is to, again, tell government, what is most efficient. So, like I said, I've given you the example of, look, it's great to have an all electric building, but if it's a mixed use building and I want to allure a restaurant where we still have the ability to use gas, natural gas, which is, by the way, clean energy, how can we have a balance of that? And so I challenge my team to make sure that we're thinking ahead. We're thinking about the balance. Again, don't come to me with a technology that's unproven where we're the guinea pig. We need the user experience, the data, so we can ensure that when we build it, it works. I've had some experiments, including that puzzle lift system I mentioned on parking. I probably would say that that's only the 50% solution. We could have looked at other opportunities for parking that could have been, less expensive and maybe a better user experience. So that's what I challenge my team to provide is making sure that we're balancing that technology could maybe save us money, make us money, not cost us money, and not give a bad user experience.
So last question, if you could wave a magic wand and remove one challenge from your day-to-day, what would you say it would be?
Wow. I wish if I could wave the magic wand, I would make things less expensive and we could increase the velocity of housing at all levels. I mean, it's in California, and I'm sure it's similar in New York, but it's really bad in California to create, let's just say, a missing middle. So a teacher or firefighter where there's not a lot of public subsidy for that person and their spouse maybe making $150,000 combined, maybe even $200,000 combined. There's no public subsidy for them. And so, but to build something that they can afford is really difficult. And so we're really That's why they call it the missing middle. Additionally, to house someone that maybe is less fortunate, which is awfully difficult, it could take over $1 million a unit to subsidize and build an apartment for
Mm.
someone who, maybe is as an immigrant to this country, working, incredibly hard for the infrastructure reasons that we need all people to have jobs in this country, and yet it takes $1 million a unit to actually subsidize the unit so they can afford it. This is rent somewhere between $1,500 to $1,700 for a 2-bedroom unit that needs to be subsidized. So if I could wave a magic wand, we would reduce costs. That would allow money to go farther for everybody. We're really at a crisis standpoint, especially now with high interest rates, especially now with the disruption happening in Treasury and our monetary system. And it's a very in California right now, at least in Northern California, we're in a real estate recession, commercial real estate recession, and it's because of those factors I mentioned. So yes, if I was a wizard or a warlock or whatever I was, I would wave costs down, and we would increase supply.
Sounds great. I think that's admirable. Yeah, I think that's admirable, man. That's definitely a really tough issue. So I'd love to see that change as well. I appreciate your insights. I appreciate your answers, man. It's been a wonderful conversation. I want to give you the opportunity to share where people can find you, where people can interact with you, or any last words that you may have.
Well, first of all, Derek, it's because of people like you that are doing these kinds of podcasts and creating awareness. That's what it's all about. It's about information and sharing information. So thank you for doing what you do. You can find me on your local internet at Republic Family of Companies or Republic Urban Properties, Michael Van Avery. If you're ever in San Jose, California, look me up. We have a wonderful restaurant here in our building called Copita, which we're investors in. And if you want to come out to California and check out what's going on in Silicon Valley, I'd love to have you. So thank you for everything, and really appreciate being on your show.
Absolutely, Michael. Again, thank you. And this has been a great episode of Assets and Algorithms.